Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
Well, John, we're back again this week. We got a lot of fun things to talk about, to be honest with you. We got a couple of big-time football games. One was a big-time win for the Barren County Trojans against Central Hardin. And the other was, I'm going to try to explain the finish of the Glasgow Scotties football game over to Adair County. But we're going to start off with this Barren County win, which you got to witness. I think we were talking about it on the phone yesterday. You felt like maybe this is one of the best wins in the program's history, at least in the time you've been doing the games from the booth?
Yeah, I said it that night. 28 years at the school and been covering the football games, and I can't remember a bigger upset. Mm-hmm. Maybe a couple times, they've knocked off Glasgow here or there or whatever, but this was, if it's not, sometimes we get into hyperbole a little bit. It's one of the bigger upsets. Mm-hmm. Knocking off Central Hardin at the time was 5-1, and sometimes you can be 5-1. It depends on your schedule, obviously. Right. But they've beaten Louisville DeSales, Louisville Fern Creek, Louisville Butler. Mm-hmm. Only loss was to a really good Henderson County team. That kind of, those teams have good programs.
Yeah.
And Barren with coming, losing Jamison Bowie and things like that, it just didn't look like. To be honest with you, it didn't look like they would. I said before the game we would probably be heavily underdog for almost every game the rest of the year.
Well, and going into the game, the last couple of games, Barren had struggled on offense.
Could not move the ball.
Lost with the loss of Jamison Bowie. That had also affected their defense.
And Drew Fisher being out.
Two games. And so if anybody was coming into the game, there was no way they would look at it and say, yeah, this is a game that Barren could win. I mean, I figured most people would look at it and say this is Central Hardin's game to lose, but I don't even think that was necessarily the way it worked out. Well, let's back up real quick. Last year, Barren beat Central Hardin at Central Hardin, but Central Hardin had missed 2 weeks before that game. And even though Barren played well and won the game, you could tell during that game that Central Hardin was struggling in offense. Their rhythm was down. They had a lot of mistakes in the game, and they let Barren stick around and win that game. But on Friday night, Barron's defense was great because I think Barren, had 167 total yards of offense, something like that?
Yeah, I only had 20 at halftime.
Yeah, and so, I mean, that just shows you just how tremendous the defense played against Central Hardin throughout the game, from what I could tell. Yeah,
defensively we were tremendous. And for those who weren't there, Central Hardin had their players. Mm-hmm. I mean, they had lost a good running back 3 weeks ago to a knee injury. Mm-hmm. But everybody who had played the previous 2 weeks was playing. I mean, so but the defensive effort was tremendous for the whole game. Their quarterback, his last name was Spurrier. I remember that because it's hard to forget a Spurrier. But he was only 1 for 9 for -2 yards.
Wow.
For the entire game.
Yeah.
So we gave up some yards on the ground, but no big plays. Mm-hmm. And, defensively, Ryan Shirley, I think he had 15 tackles. I mean, he's just playing lights out from that linebacker position. Trick Carver, another linebacker, had a lot of tackles. Jackson Arms. Those guys on the defensive side of the ball really kept us in the game because at halftime, I think Barren only had 2 first downs and really just did not look like a team that was capable of scoring very many points. But at halftime, it was 0-0.
Right.
And so anytime an underdog can stay in the game, the longer and longer you can get in the game, obviously the confidence starts to turn a little bit, and anything can happen.
The pressure goes on the team that's favored to win the game at that point.
But Central Hardin scored early in the third quarter on an interception return. Now, they didn't drive it down the field, but it was a 33-yard interception return. And then it started to look like, okay, it's going to start to get away from it, but it did not. And, Barren made a lot of key plays down the stretch. Mm-hmm. That was, it was nice to see. They were down. I think the score was 14-8 with and Barren got a stop, and Barren got the ball about 2.5 minutes to go, 14-8, but they had to go 80-something yards, and we've not really thrown it much all game. A lot of it was Drew Fisher, who had a really good game, first game back in 2 weeks. He gives us speed in the backfield, and Donovan Bradshaw was doing a lot. And then that last drive, you got to give Will Childress a lot of credit. I mean, he made some plays. He made some plays with his legs where he scrambled for some first downs. And then probably the biggest play is he hit Gage Allen on about a 35, 36-yard pass play down the middle of the field that got us all the way down to the 12.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think 2 plays later he hit Gage again in the end zone with 30-something seconds to go for the tie, 14-14. And got to give Aiden Miller credit. He came right in. And just like he's made game-winning field goal, and he's made all of his extra points since he's been back out there. He made it 15-14, and then only left them with 33 seconds to go, and Barren held on.
Yeah. Now I was asked about if Greg Rich covered the game for us.
Right.
There, got photos and whatnot. If he had a video of the play at the end of the game, apparently there was some controversy about a catch or a no catch or
we
whatever.
got a break. Yeah, it was. He's got the video of the last play.
Yes.
In which Aiden Miller just knocks the ball down.
Yeah.
But the play before that, which was probably 12 seconds to go, something like that, maybe 15 seconds. The one mistake that we could not make, we made.
Yeah.
When you're up 1 and the other team is 70 yards down the field, you can't let anybody get by us.
Yeah. Play as deep as you possibly can, I guess.
And we did not. And they ran by our corner, and our safeties were late getting over there, and they caught it about the 20. Mm-hmm. And the kid looked like to me, took 3 or 4 steps and then just dropped the ball. Wasn't hit, just dropped it out of bounds. Mm-hmm. So I think we all assumed that they were going to get the ball at the 12 with about 6 seconds to go. It didn't mean they was going to score, but they'd be have a really good shot. And the official came in and called it an incomplete pass. And it looked like, from me and from talking to Chad Withrow, who was covering the game down on the field, he looked like it's a clear catch. And why he dropped it, not really for sure.
Yeah, but
he did. But we'll take a break. We've had a ton of breaks go against us in the past. So
take all the ones you can get.
Yeah. But it was Will Childress, quarterback, really played so much better in the second half. His decision making, he scrambled for some tough yards, and then Gage Allen made 2 big plays, the catch across the middle, and then the end zone catch the ball was kind of low. He went down there and got it. Mm-hmm. Just got to give those guys a lot of credit. When it's tough to play any sport when you can't score.
Yeah.
We've gone kind of like 2 games and couldn't really score, and it's kind of depressing because whatever sport you play, you want to score.
Right.
And to kind of find that resolve and give Coach Muse credit, too, for hanging in there. Barren only had 1 penalty. The game was clean. I think Central Hardin had only 3.
Yeah.
So we only had 1 penalty for the game, and for the year we've not been penalized much at all. So, the kids hung in there. They were focused and got a great win. Very well deserved. It's tough. They've gone through 3 coaches basically in 5 months, and happy for them.
Yeah, one of the things about I would say coming into the game, I was looking over the stuff before the game, and I would have thought Central Hardin was a team to beat in the district. North Hardin obviously was going to be down a little bit this year. I think they have their quarterback back, but all those other players are gone. And they play a tough schedule, but they've struggled even against that tough schedule more than they usually would. Because they've won a number of those games the last few years against those tough teams they've played. So I would have thought Central was a team to beat coming in. Meade County, that's North Hardin played them this past Friday, beat them 41-14. Meade doesn't seem to be at the level it has been at sometimes in the past. But at the same time, this is a good win. But it also, Barren is in a great position with the last 2 games to get 2 weeks off. Then they play North Hardin and they play Meade. North Hardin's at home. Meade's on the road. That's going to be tough. And I think it's curious to see what these players take from this win.
Well, the win really changes people's, perspective on things. It looked pretty dire that basically we're just going to have to play the year out. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden with that win, it kind of changes everything. Mm-hmm. It's a win against a good team, a good program at home, and now you've put yourself in position to possibly securing a home playoff bid.
Yep.
And so, who knows? It's just and going into a break, a week off, a fall break, you can't go into it any better than that.
No, and it'll be curious. When I say it's curious to see what the players take from it. Obviously, Coach Muse got them well prepared for this game. They played well. It's curious to see what kind of energy with the week off that they can take in 2 weeks from now?
I think it's perfect.
Yeah, I was going to ask you just from a coaching perspective, how you look at that.
For football, I think it's needed.
Yeah.
From basketball, if you're playing another sport that's not as physical per se, you need to continue. A lot of it's timing and everything. Football is such a physical sport. I think a little break is probably important. They've been going since June, basically.
Yeah.
So I think it comes at a good time, and they have something to look forward to.
Right.
Sometimes you may come back from fall break and you're, 1-5, 1-6, and
you'd rather be at the beach still.
What do you have to look forward to now?
Yeah.
Now they've proven to themselves again that they can knock off these teams, and now they have a realistic chance of competing in the playoffs, at least in the district playoffs.
Yeah, and also I guess because of the way that the playoffs are set up now, with the playing those first 2 rounds in your district.
And a district is not this gigantic district that we have really no chance in, like the Bowling Green South Warren district.
Yeah. Speaking of that, South Warren, maybe there's no challenge in that district either, because South Warren ran over Bowling Green on Friday night, and we figured they were one of the best teams in the state. I don't think we were the only ones figuring this. But that was an impressive win, and it just looks like they are far and away the best team in that particular district right now.
They do. They look like they are. Bowling Green may be a little down. They were state champions last year, lost a lot of players, playing a freshman quarterback, I believe, at times. So they may be down for Bowling Green. I mean, they're still good, but they're probably down for Bowling Green. They'll more than likely have to face them again at the end of the year.
Yeah. Because Greenwood, they beat up on Christian County. I'm curious to
Quarterback
see.
was back.
Yeah, he was back. Makes a big difference. I'm curious to see that Greenwood Bowling Green game. I think that's in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, Greenwood has, that's been their issue. Like any other team, have not been able. It's not that they haven't beaten Bowling Green or South Warren. They haven't been real competitive.
Yeah,
and before you can beat somebody, you at least got to show you belong. Mm-hmm. So maybe this is a year where they maybe they can show they belong on the field with those two, or at least with Bowling Green.
Yeah, because it looks like it's South Warren's. I don't know at the state level, but there are teams that are going to be able to compete with South Warren at that state level. But within this district, I'd say in the western part of the state, nobody. Yeah. I think it's Covington Catholic, the usual suspects probably from up in northern Kentucky. That's going to be the team they're going to have to contend with. But back to the Barren County thing, how excited do you think those players were to get that win? By
the reaction, they were hugging and they were doing everything you're supposed to. There seemed to be true joy out there.
Yeah.
To come back that way and then, in the game, knocking down that pass at the end. And, it was Central Hardin looked stunned. Literally just stunned. And I think they were stunned. I think they thought they would just come in here and get a win, which is a little surprising since they lost to us last year, too.
Yeah.
Situation is different, but still a little bit, I think they were genuinely surprised. But, yeah, I think our kids were happy. They acted that way.
Well, and obviously, you mentioned them getting Drew Fisher back, and that obviously had a huge impact.
Big impact because he gives us speed in the backfield. Mm-hmm. Donovan Bradshaw is more the in-between tackles. Drew can get outside of people, and it just stretches the defense a little bit. Plus, he's one of our corners on defense. He probably had 3 or 4 tackles himself.
Yep. Anything else about that game that you can think of that people?
No, that was just like I said. It's they don't come along often, and you don't see a lot of upsets in high school football. It's generally very chalky, and the team that has the most players and talent normally wins. But this was one of those situations where a team. Barren found a way to win.
Yeah, and Coach Muse has always done a good job with the defense, and now he's putting some of the better players on the defensive side of the ball and taking advantage of that.
I think he's done a really good job.
Yeah. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, while you were witnessing a tremendous upset there by the Barren County Trojans against Central Hardin, I was in Columbia, Kentucky, and for the Glasgow Scotties district game against Adair County. Adair did what they needed to in the first half, and the score was 12-6 at halftime. Glasgow ended up pulling away in the second half. They were at 32-12 with 2 minutes and 11 seconds to play. And I've been asked a lot of questions about the end of that game, let me tell you. So I figured I'd just take a minute and try to explain what I saw, because I don't hang out in the press box. I'm always down on the sideline, usually on the side of the team I cover. So that's, when you're the visitor, that's chain gang is over there and that kind of stuff. So with that 2 minutes and 11 seconds to go, Glasgow had made a stop. They'd gotten a sack. I think it was Tony Hammond actually got a sack. And so Adair punted. And Andrew Phillips got the ball. He returned the ball down the sideline. The game had been pretty physical, and there were some plays early in the game that I'll come to here in a minute that I think I've seen actually flagged during the course of the season. And they were not flagged early in that game, which kind of surprised me. So on the punt return, a kid from Adair County, like I was standing right there, he went for a tackle and basically missed. He went over the top of the pile and hit the players and coaches on the sideline.
Who weren't in the game.
Yeah, they weren't in the game. They were just over there doing what they were supposed to do, cheering on their team or whatever. They weren't doing anything. They were innocent bystanders hit by a flying football player is basically the way it worked out.
Right.
So meanwhile, I'm watching that. Then I realize there's a ruckus out on the field, and I look up, and there's a Glasgow player and an Adair County player, and they're not really throwing punches. They're doing what you do. You grab each other's helmets and sling each other around kind of thing. So then people rush out on the field from each side. The coaches do a good job of getting everybody back, breaking it up, getting everybody back. There's as one spectator referred to it as, it looked like a confetti gun of flags had gone off because they're all over the place. And so then that's going on there. And what I'm describing here is all within a minute. Mm-hmm. There's not a long lapse of time in terms of all this activity. The kid hitting the sideline, which turns out to be important, because then after they get all that separated, the officials are having a meeting, and the kid that, comes and he's walking by the chain gang and says something about his neck hurting. And the guy in the chain gang tells him, don't move, stay right here. So then they work as the officials and all are still talking, and then Coach Garman and the Adair County coach, they're now out there. They start working on this kid, don't let him go anywhere, get him stabilized and everything. It takes a little while to get a neck brace for him. I think it takes about 20 minutes for the ambulance to get there. It was not at the field. I don't know where it was. So what I understand is people on the other side of the field didn't see what happened on the Glasgow sideline. And some folks on the other side of the field apparently thought...
And there's no fence there.
Yeah, there's no fence. There's no separation, which I believe is the dumbest thing in high school sports.
There are places that way, that you bring your lawn chair and sit right on the track or right on the field, and which in today's time, the way how angry people are getting,
mm-hmm.
how much abuse, I'll just say it, coaches and referees take.
Yeah.
I think it's a recipe ultimately for disaster.
Well, and it could have been on Friday night.
Right.
It wasn't, but it could have been. But also there were people from Adair County who could not see what happened on the Glasgow sideline. But because something had happened on the field, they had, I guess, determined that something must have happened on the Glasgow sideline to their player.
So
nobody from Glasgow did anything to the kid. He missed a tackle and hit people on the sideline. This is how he got hurt.
Well, you don't have to be right to have an opinion anymore.
Well, exactly. So they start yelling from over there
at
the Glasgow, telling them to get out of there or whatever. And as one Adair County administrator pointed to me, we all have idiots.
Yes.
Yes, you do. And we all do. Because there was an idiot moment by a Glasgow fan in this particular game that I'll get back to here in just a second. But basically, the delay of the game at the end and the decision to call the game was basically this kid's gotten hurt. Things had gotten rough.
20-minute delay.
Yeah. There's 2 minutes and 11 seconds left. There's no point in continuing the game. It's decided. You're past the limit. And so that's basically why the game ended the way it did at 2 minutes and 11 seconds. It wasn't because of the scuffle on the field so much. It was just that was one of the contributing factors, plus the injured player all the time. And the
injured player was not part of the scuffle.
No, he had not. He was over there trying to make a football play. Yeah,
right.
His injury had nothing to do with whatever happened on the field.
Well, now you're giving the truth that gets in the way of a good story.
Well, apparently I am, because a lot of people were asking me, well, what happened to the player? Because they'd heard the player got hurt. Who did something? I'm like, nobody did anything. He missed the tackle and hit the people on the sideline, and because of the way, he went into him head first because, he's trying to dive and make a tackle, but there's nothing that breaks him running into the people. And so, the truth of the matter was, there was a scuffle. There were a lot of penalties in the game, going all the way back early in the game, but some things are not related, as it turns out.
That's right.
No matter what people think or what they think they saw. But there was one moment earlier in the fourth quarter where I couldn't figure out who the flag was thrown on. An official on the Glasgow sideline flagged somebody for saying something, and then he couldn't find his flag, and somebody from the Glasgow fan base had picked up the flag and thrown it in the garbage can. They threw it in the garbage can, John.
Was the fan that close to the field, or did he run on the field?
No, he didn't run on the field. I think that, sometimes they throw the flag up and it goes like when it's on the sideline, they're throwing it on the sideline. But his flag went, I guess, back behind the players. I never saw it. I just saw them roaming around like the guys going, "Where's my flag?" And people are standing around. And then somebody said, "Well, it's in the trash can." And I was like, but it goes back to what we were just talking about. There's no separation there.
Right.
And there's got to be. I just don't understand these schools these days that have no separation between the fans and the field.
I don't either.
It's just foolish, to be honest with you.
Well,
fence isn't that expensive. Somebody will donate it to you.
Yes.
So I think all that is contributing factors, as we were talking about. So anyway, that had happened. But earlier in the game, there was a play. I think there's been at least a couple of times this year, and maybe even 3 times that I know of, Glasgow's been flagged for what they refer to as a dangerous play. It's not an illegal block, but I guess they were just trying to legislate out these hits that are either away from the play or behind the play, that kind of thing. And maybe they've been doing this for a while, and it's just first year I've caught it.
Yeah, it's these it's blocking defensive people. Yeah, it's been around for the last couple of years.
Yeah, so but these are
blindside blocks.
Yeah, so there was one on a Glasgow player, like he got hit, the blindside hit, and they didn't flag it. And obviously Garmin's had his team get flagged for it, so he's, why is that not a penalty?
Right.
We've seen it all year. Why is that not a penalty? And I don't know what the explanation was, because I was also like, why is that not a penalty? They just didn't flag it. And then there was a couple of hits in the game where I thought the Glasgow player was basically down, but they hadn't blown the whistle. And, the guy comes flying in there and hits him. Of
course, it may be a different – unlike, again, basketball and baseball that your region basically has assigned – in basketball, it's the 4th region officials.
Yeah.
No matter where you play in the region, it's – the 4th region officials. Football's not done that way. You have different crews that are assigned to. There's not a 4th region.
Yeah, it's a geographic assignment area, basically.
That's correct. And Adair could be in there with Campbellsville and the E-Town group.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't know, but I'm guessing maybe some of the inconsistency could also be that's a whole different group.
Yeah, or they could even be in there, like maybe Somerset or somewhere. Russell Springs, wherever that group is.
Well, this was a game in which I think Glasgow is probably 4 touchdowns better than Adair.
Yeah,
but I could see this coming. Yeah, you cannot, even at the NFL level, teams do not play great every week.
Yeah.
They just do not. You just saw this past week where the Rams, coming off their biggest win of the year against Tampa, laid an egg yesterday.
Yeah.
It happens. And Glasgow coming off arguably their best win against Greenwood, at least one of them.
Yeah.
You knew that at least I thought that they were not going to play at that emotional high against Adair. At Adair, and Adair has a way of uglying the game up. I saw them against.
You saw them already this year.
I saw them against Barren. Yeah, they play a kind of an ugly game type, and their only chance against Glasgow is to possess the ball, keep away big plays, and so forth, and to make it as physical as possible. And so did I think Glasgow would win? Yes. Did I think it may be a struggle? Yeah, I thought it could be a struggle. I mean, that's just a natural. Just from an emotional point of view and just playing at Adair, I kind of figured it was going to be a tough game for them. They got the win. The big news was, how it ended, and a lot of people just didn't know. Mm-hmm. And now that you explained it, it makes more sense. But people don't always want to know the truth.
Yeah, they don't.
If it doesn't match their perspective of things, they'll go with that direction too. But it's a win, and nobody got hurt, which is good news for Glasgow. Did they play great? No. But they all just wiped this off, and they got Taylor County coming up.
Yeah, and I did check on to see what the prognosis was for the injured Adair County player, and I mean he was standing whenever he said something. All of the looking at him, at least on the field and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, he was able to move. He didn't have any seeming issues. I mean, he may have been, what is it? They call it a stinger or whatever,
yeah.
and that's possible.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, hopefully he's okay as well. But yeah, the ending was entertaining for me in a way because, I mean, I'm just there. I get to see all this and hear all the chatter and whatnot. But it was even more entertaining on Saturday morning when I was over at the district soccer and people are coming up to me. What happened at the end of that game? And I'm like, no, that's not what happened. So yeah, it was a pretty interesting situation. But back to how Glasgow played, there were a couple of things. Like you said, Adair, they did what they needed to do in the first half. They possessed the ball. I think Glasgow ran maybe 8-10 plays in the first half. I mean, they didn't run a whole bunch of plays. Maybe 12, but I mean, it was hardly any plays whatsoever. They had the ball for maybe 5 minutes, and that was 2 possessions. So Adair had 3 possessions in the first half, and they just dominated control of the ball. And yet Glasgow was still up 12-6 at halftime, and they were playing without John Carter Myers. He hurt his thumb against Greenwood. He told me he could have played in the game, but there was they were going to. Easton Jesse started. They had, I think, Mason Arms maybe filling in his slot.
Still a big loss. He's arguably their best player.
Yeah. And so it's a big loss, but they felt like they could get through it.
And they did.
And they got this week off, and then, as you mentioned, they have Taylor County coming up. Obviously a big game there. That's been a big game between the two of them since they've been to the district together.
Yeah, another heated rival. They've turned into a big rival.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes – emotional as well.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of penalties in those games. So, it's something. I think it's something they probably need to work on a little bit. Perhaps, I don't know how often they're penalized or anything like that, but I know the Taylor County game has brought out the best and the worst at times.
Yeah,
because I know Taylor how they play.
Yeah, it's going to be very similar to the Adair County game because. I would venture to say that right now Glasgow is the more physically talented team than Taylor.
I guarantee you.
They haven't necessarily been the 2 previous years that Taylor's had talent that can keep up with them. But this year I'd say Glasgow has the more talented team. And so Taylor's got the same thing. They got to figure out how to keep Glasgow from having the football, and they got to ugly it up to see if they can get to them emotionally. And, yeah, the Scotties need to take a lesson from this game with Adair County. And I'm sure that's something that Coach Garman and his staff will work on. We got all the skills, we got all the plays, we can do all the things, but you've got to maintain your composure no matter what happens in that game and just prove play in, play out. You're just better.
Right.
And, that's eventually how that Adair County game worked out, no matter what happened at the end of it. That's basically the way it had worked out to that point.
And John Carter Myers will help that.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
Senior, composed kid, too, and, that will help. And, they will, like I said, they got the win, move on, and that's how I take it. Let's learn, move on, let's get ready for the last part of the season.
Yeah, and speaking of Taylor, they also won on Friday night, and so they are they're both I think 6-1 when they play each other.
Only loss is Green,
which has not lost a game yet, right?
Only loss is to Green, who's undefeated.
Yeah, and obviously better than any Green County team's been in a while.
And I think they will stay in. I think they'll end the season. I looked at their schedule. They got Warren Central.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're going to lose to them.
Nope.
Metcalf, and without Peyton Dial, I think it's. You got to make Barren a favor, and they still have Edmondson.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Green's sitting in the driver's seat in their district, and that puts them in the driver's seat in the playoffs as well.
Sure does.
So it'll be interesting. But like you said, Taylor County's only losses to them. I think after I saw that Greene had beat Taylor County is whenever I realized, Greene County's for real this year.
Me too. That confirmed it.
Yeah, and so it'll be an interesting matchup, but it'll be a key game because that means they're both going to play. They're both going to be at home for that first round game. That means whichever one wins that game gets a home game for that second round of the playoffs. So it's going to be a big deal for them. Anything else from Friday Night Football that stood out to you?
No, I mean Warren Central. Lost again to Warren East. I think it's 55 in a row. I wish they could snap that sometime, to be honest with you. It just becomes a burden that they have to carry for a while. Mm-hmm. It looks like Allen's turned it around a little bit.
Yeah.
I think they beat McLean County, and now they're heads above water, 4-3 maybe. Mm-hmm. So other than that, I think the surprise was the Barren.
Yep.
Barren knocking out Central Hardin.
Yep. All right, it's Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Well, John, we have quite a few other local sports we need to cover in the area that happened last week and will be going on again this week, even though the football teams are taking Friday night off. We've got a lot of golf coming up this week, hopefully. I think the weather's supposed to be a little bit rough tomorrow, maybe, for the start of the girls' state tournament. But let's back up real quick and talk about the boys' region that was played last Tuesday.
Right.
We had a couple of players, Jamison Corbin for Barren County and Bo Shelton for Glasgow, who both qualified for state. Overall, I think most of our golfers for Barren and Glasgow played pretty well. Some of them played their best rounds of the year.
That's all you can ask for.
Yep, and so a couple of them just barely missed the cut as individuals. I think Kyler Kinney was maybe a stroke or 2 strokes off, and I think Clay Pippen and was about that same shape, a stroke or 2 strokes off.
Shot 80, is that right?
Yeah, I believe that's correct.
Yeah.
They had good days, but
Jamison shot 75? Is that right?
He shot 75.
That's back-to-back years that he's qualified.
Yep, freshman and sophomore years.
Freshman and sophomore year, that's strong.
Yep,
and Glasgow, he shot
76.
Bo
Shelton
shot 76, but that didn't get him in. He had to win in a playoff, too.
That's right. We ended up with 4 people at 76 for 3 spots. And so basically it was a survival of the fittest, I suppose, for that last spot.
Made a nice little putt there, too, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I tell you what, man, his second shot was a little from the rough, but it hit the pin and bounced off. I mean, he almost was, eagled his way into the tournament right there and left it for the other 3 to scrap it out, but it didn't quite go in. But it was a nice shot.
Yeah.
Especially I refer to it as a rough because there's no real fringe out there. It's kind of a fairway, and then there's no fringe. It's just a roughish area.
Well, that's give them credit. I mean, golf is such an individual. I know they play as a team, but it's an individual sport.
Oh yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure. Mm-hmm. I listened to the interview that you had with both of them, and I think it was Jamison that was saying that, it was pretty nerve-wracking. Yeah, coming home, he said it was pretty nerve-wracking, but, they obviously they learned to handle it well, to shoot 75, and then for winning it in the playoff, you've got to really be able to handle that stress and that pressure and so forth, and, both kids did a great job.
Well, an interesting thing to me for Jamison and Bo is like the first 9, they started out on the back 9, but his first 9, Jamison was below what I expected him to be. I don't know that he necessarily struggled. He just wasn't playing clean, I guess is the way to look at it. But the back 9, his second 9, he shot the ball extremely well and got himself back because he was he kind of one of 2 things kind of happened for him. He played consistently on his second 9, and some people who were ahead of him started to drop off. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, though, Bo Shelton was like 2 shots off the lead until about hole 16. I think he had a little bit of a rough spot there, but he pulled it back together, to get in that playoff because, he was shooting – the winner, I think, was 1 under, and Bo was shooting, I think, 1 over going into about hole 15 or 16. I tried to keep track of it as they go along, but also trying to cover them all.
Well, it's hard to. It's not like they've got roaming signs that tell you like they do on the pros, right?
Yeah. So they do these days. The players have an app, this Bluegrass Golf Tour. They'll give the players an app and they can put their scores in there as they go, and instead of keeping it traditionally on the card kind of setup. So that's kind of live updating, but it's not a requirement, so not everybody does it. So sometimes you'll look it down and somebody will be like 2 over, but they've completed 5 holes and everybody else is done with 12 holes out there, and you're like, there's no way they're still in that range. They're got to be further down. But yeah, he was right there. He had a little bit of a stumble, finished hole 9 real well, and then like you said, got in that playoff. The great thing for both of these guys is they're both just sophomores.
Right.
I mean, 2 or 3 of the guys who were ahead of them or with them, were seniors this year. I think a couple of the Greenwood kids, I think, are seniors. Greenwood ran away from the team. I mean, the top 3 golfers were from Greenwood. They ran away from the team score to win it. So those guys will be back.
It's a big, especially with guys. You would think they are going to get stronger, maturity wise and so forth, which in golf should actually be a positive factor. You should hit it longer.
Right.
The older you get and the stronger you get, you should hit the ball longer, which normally, as long as you hit it longer and straighter, normally is a big plus.
Yeah. And so both these, I mean, you can tell, both Jamison and Bo have grown since last year, just physically grown. And I don't think, like with Barren, they had 2 seniors, Evan Johnson, maybe he only had 1 senior, but he ended up not playing in the final there in the regional tournament. Glasgow had 2 seniors. Neither one of them were in the 5 that played in the regional tournament. So basically both of our teams will have everybody back next year. And they all, like we talked about, they improved their scores, and there are a couple of them that are just right there off of that. So, things shape up well for them coming back next year.
Wish them best this week.
Yep, and then Bo and Jamison both play in the state tournament. Starts Friday at Bowling Green Country Club. I wrote down the times here. Let's see. Bo tees off at 11:30 on Friday on hole 1, and Jamison tees off at 12:15 on hole 1. I believe if you want to go and you want to watch them play, you've got to go through the KHSA online ticketing system.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So if you're going to do that, you better go ahead and do that. If you plan on going over there, you better go ahead and get on there and do your tickets. I think what I'll do is share out on Twitter the link that they had out earlier, so that people can find it there. And if Facebook is back up and running, I'll put it on there too. But it wasn't working earlier, so people can find those tickets if they're looking for them. The girls' tournament, as we mentioned, starts tomorrow at Bowling Green Country Club as well. The Glasgow Lady Scotties as a team are in it. I think they will enter as in the top 5 team scores from, just to have the averages across the season.
Marshall County, the big favorite.
Yeah.
Won it last year, got most of them back.
Yeah, they're just rolling along. They're shooting low 300s almost every tournament they're in, no matter where they are. So going to be hard to deal with them. But yeah, Glasgow's, I don't know what their team average is, but it's, their low round this year was like 308, I think. So they can get there. They've gotten there. But I think they're usually shooting 315, 320.
Need to play better than they played last week.
Yeah, that course was rough on everybody, but yeah, they definitely have to pick it up versus what happened last week. And they only have 4. I don't think Ava Grace Tao will be able to play in the state tournament. They have a 5th, but her back was hurt. She wasn't able to play in the region.
You can't force scores. So
yeah.
Everybody needs to play well.
Yep. So they get started tomorrow morning. Bailey Birdsell is the first of them to tee off at 7:54 a.m. on hole 10. Then Lena Harlow will tee off. It's about 9 minutes between tee times. Nina McMurtry and then Grayson Flatt. And then Landry Steenbergen for Barren County, she will tee off at 11:48 on hole 1. Had one of her best days of the year in the regional tournament.
Yeah, and we talked about it last week too.
Yeah.
I was really happy for her. She missed it by 1 last year. So, wish her the best. Wish the Glasgow girls the best as well. And it's a course they're all familiar with because I think they've all played down there before.
Yeah. So for some of them, more than once. And it's probably not, the upside of the state tournament being in Bowling Green is it's not hard for our players here to get some practice rounds down there when the tournament, but just to go down there and play.
Right.
So I mean, it's kind of a home away from home course for some of these players. The district soccer tournaments were this past weekend, and before we get into that, real quick, the fact that they have these soccer districts set up the way they do right now, I find just ridiculous. The KHSA, with its effort to have every sport mirror basketball, I have no idea why they are pursuing this, but basically we have, I think, the 15th district and the 16th district there's 3 boys teams in the 15th district. There's only 2 girls teams. I think there are 3 girls teams in the 16th and only 2 boys teams. I'm pretty sure that's the way it works out. That's not really a district tournament. I mean, they already know they're going to the regional tournament. I kind of don't know why they bother playing these games.
Well, to be honest with you, both of those districts, since they're not full districts, should be combined.
Yes.
But there will be strong pushback from the 16th district.
I imagine there would be.
They don't want to play. I'm being fair. Mm-hmm. Their chances of going to the region, if they come and play in the Barren Glasgow district, is not near as strong as they stayed with each other.
Yeah,
and that's just the fact.
Yeah,
and if we went to the Bowling Green district, our chances would not be very good either.
Ancient times,
we were.
It was the 8th district, and all these guys were together in that district
but
to start with.
It doesn't sound much like a district when there's only 2.
Yeah, no, it's really not.
I'm not crazy with just 3.
Yeah.
But just 2, come on now.
Well, and I guess
and somebody will be a district champion, and you can be a district champion, but, come on now.
Yeah, I guess from my competitive standpoint of view, it's not the best competition setup.
Right.
I get why folks who would want to have the opportunity to play in the region and they don't get that opportunity. I get it, lobbying for your team and feeling like, you want your players to have that experience and all that. But on the flip side of that, if you don't feel like your team can compete in a district with Barren and Glasgow, and you go draw the short straw and you get the 14th district loser, it's not going to be any better. I mean,
10-0.
Yeah, welcome to the regional tournament.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you enjoyed your bus drive down here.
Right.
I'm not trying to be just mean or whatever, but I mean, that's just facts of how it's going to work out.
Right.
So I just don't find it to be all that useful.
I'm sure some of the schools will say we can at least compete and have some form of championship among ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a 2-team or a 3-team, at least we're going to celebrate whatever.
Yeah.
Now, to me, since I don't have a team like that, I just don't think it's a real competitive argument.
Yeah.
And it goes back to, does everybody deserve trophies and titles? I don't think so, because I think it dilutes it overall.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there's going to be people who go, and looking back, we won a district title in 2000 whatever. Okay.
Yeah.
But that doesn't really, to me, show a whole picture. And it's just I'm not a big fan of that at all. But
yeah.
I'm not, just like in football, we've talked 1,000 times in football. Football is treated differently, and it should be treated differently, but not everybody deserves to go to the playoffs in football either.
Right.
It's because it's not competitive.
Yeah, the thing about football is the numbers and the physical nature of the game does change the dynamics of it.
Right.
Soccer is considered a contact sport, so the middle schoolers and whatnot are not allowed to play.
Mm-hmm.
And it is physical. It's more physical than people realize, but it's not physical like football.
No.
I mean, I think it's physical kind of like basketball is physical.
Right.
There's probably more intentional contact. Well, there certainly is more intentional contact in soccer.
And sometimes it's because of lack of skill.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
in fact, the less skill you have, the more physical you want it.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to what we were talking about, a
Mm-hmm.
football game between Glasgow and Adair.
Right.
But I just don't like this KHSA effort to make everything mirror basketball, because not every sport is created the same. Plus, you just don't have basketball has 258 teams or whatever in it,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. That's plenty. You just don't. Some of these other sports do not have the numbers to really fill out.
There may not be. I don't know how many soccer teams there are.
I don't know.
It's not 250.
Not close.
Not even close.
I would guess it's 2/3 that.
Well, not what? A third of the basketball region doesn't play soccer.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, there's 18 teams I think there's 17 teams in the region, but there's 12 or 13 that play soccer.
That's correct.
Well, I think it's 12, basically, because I think you have one school has a girls' team and no boys' team. One school has a boys' team and no girls' team. So I think it's the way it works out. So, I mean, that's basically 3 districts right there. And that's not 4. So, anyway, with all that said, congratulations to the district winners. Barren County's girls beat Glasgow 3-0.
And that was Saturday. Yeah.
Yep,
and we're mainly talking about, at least I'm talking about it, that this district should be combined with
the 16th.
Yes, right. They should be combined. And then it's more of a district feel. Barren beat Glasgow for the 3rd time this year, and I think they've all been shutouts.
Yep.
And Barron's got a good team.
Yeah,
they've got a good group of seniors, and Allie Bell and Hallie Hills and their goalie Grayson DeWeese. I mean, they've got a solid team. They were good last year. I think Coach McFarland's doing a good job this year as well. They played a good schedule.
Yep.
I mean, they're arguably the 3rd best team in the region.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'd say so. Right there with Greenwood and Bowling Green behind them. Because they beat the other 14th district teams.
That's correct. So they we wish them the best. And Glasgow's very young and have struggled to kind of play games this year with their numbers. So they'll move on as well. And then the boys, for the 3rd time, Glasgow boys defeated Barren.
Yep, by about the same score each time.
Yeah, Barren won the opening game against Allen. I don't think Allen has won a game this year.
No, they did win one. They won their first one ever against Monroe, as a matter of fact.
All right. So Barren won that game
8-1
and lost to Glasgow in the finals. I think it was 6-1. 6-1. Yeah.
Yeah, and Barron's. You mentioned the fact that Glasgow's girls. I mean, they have 14 players. I think of those 14. 8 of them, I think, have either not played before or had not played since they were like youth league.
Right.
Or this is basically their first year.
Tough.
Yeah. So, and they're pretty young. Barren has a good group of seniors.
They do, but they got some good young ones.
They do have some
Hadley
good young
Adams is one that comes off the top of my head.
Yep.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag.
Their struggle this year is, they lost.
A lot on the defensive end, didn't it?
Yeah, they lost a lot. I think they had 9 seniors last year. Most of that was off the defense, midfield. So they've been trying to work those guys in. I think they've actually played better as the years gone on.
The Glasgow boys have got a good soccer team.
Yeah,
they're another one that I don't know if they're the 3rd best team, because I think you can take 3 or 4 of the Bowling Green schools are really good.
Yeah,
but they're outside the Bowling Green schools, probably the next best team in the region.
Yeah, the interesting thing for them all year is I don't think they've played a game yet this year where they had everybody.
Right.
Either through injuries or COVID protocols and all that kind of jazz. And they still have not, because I don't think Seth Medford played over the weekend. So they finally had everybody but him.
Yep.
But the regional draw will be this coming Friday. I think the regional tournament starts a week from today. I don't think it starts the coming weekend.
Probably on a Monday. That's what that number is, yeah.
Yeah, because I was a little surprised they actually played this district on the weekend. That one caught me a little off guard.
Well, it did, but again, this fall break, teams do everything they can.
Yeah.
So get around it.
That's right.
Because that's just the way it is.
We're not going to have another commercial break, so I want to thank McDonald's of Glasgow for continuing to sponsor our show. I enjoy drinking their unsweet tea.
I had their oatmeal yesterday.
Yeah, that's good. I do actually. I like their breakfast stuff. It's really good. But so that means we're just going to go right ahead into the next segment instead of taking a commercial break here. And we're going to talk a little bit about college football, NFL. We've got about 7 minutes left on the show.
The Cats.
Yeah. I think it was Josh Moore, I think he writes for the Lexington Herald-Leader, put on Twitter, it was the first time Kentucky had beaten Florida in Kentucky in his lifetime. I'm not sure how old Josh is, but he's older than 5.
Well, I think it was 1986, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he's younger than us, but he's old enough so that had been a long time.
Yeah. Well, I mean, give them credit. I mean, this is what I know about Kentucky. Defensively, they're really good.
Yeah.
They got some dudes on defense that are NFL players. And
you said last week you thought they were a top 25 team.
I did. No doubt about it, because their defense is good. Their offensive line is tremendous. They got NFL caliber offensive linemen.
Yeah.
They got a tremendous back, and they got I think a heck of a receiver in Robinson, the Nebraska transfer. Mm-hmm. My only question, and I said it last week, and I will stand by it, I don't know if the quarterback is at the level that they need to win Well, they beat Florida, but
Yeah.
he only had 87 yards of passing.
Yeah.
And I just think there comes a point in time where that's just not going to do it. There's going to come a times where Kentucky is going to be behind, and they're going to have to come back. But I mean, they're 5-0, and I mean, beating Florida that's a great win.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great win, and it looks like to me, Kentucky. You could argue they're the third best team in the SEC.
Yep.
I mean, Georgia and Alabama looks like the two best teams in the country by far.
Yeah.
And then you could put Kentucky. I mean, if it's not Kentucky, who is it? Is it LSU? I don't think so. Is it?
Well, they lost to Auburn.
Lost to Auburn. Is it Auburn? I don't
not convinced.
I'm not convinced of their quarterback either.
Yeah.
So why not?
I do think I would say that they might have the second best defense in the SEC.
Behind Georgia.
Yeah.
I do. No, I mean, I just, their offensive philosophy has changed, but I still need to see more from the quarterback. I just, I have to see more good decisions. He'll still throw interceptions. Mm-hmm. And they still are, when it comes down to it, they play pretty conservative offensively despite all the new toys, the new stuff. They still, they're going to have to win from behind sometime, and they're going to get behind.
Yep. Meanwhile, Wake Forest is still undefeated after they beat Louisville.
But Louisville played well.
I was going to say, actually, I'm more impressed by Louisville losing that game by 3 to Wake Forest than I probably was going into it.
Yeah, they outplayed them in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
They really played well. 37-34 was the final, and it took a field goal with 22 seconds to go by Wake Forest to win. That was on the road. Mm-hmm. And it looks like, the quarterback, Cunningham, had 4 touchdowns, 2 running, 2 passing, and it just looks like to me they've kind of got their ship straightened and a very, very there's a lot of games to win in the ACC.
Yeah.
The ACC is obviously way down.
Yeah.
Way down.
Yeah, the door's open for them if they can figure out how to win the right games.
That's correct.
And then WKU, they got down huge to Michigan State. Final was 48-31.
Yeah, not real competitive. That was you could see that writing on the wall. That's the game after Army and the game after Indiana.
Yeah.
They were down 42-14 at one time, and they made a late push, and that made it respectable. And the quarterback is really good. Threw for 450, 488.
Yeah.
A lot of touchdowns and this and that, and they're going to score on anybody. Mm-hmm. They'd probably score on Georgia a couple touchdowns, but. Yeah, I mean, you could see that it's hard, when you're playing at the level of like just the WKU level. They're not a Power 5 team, and you can jump up and beat an Indiana. They didn't; they were close, but it's hard to put those weeks back to back together. That's when numbers come into play.
Yep.
And then go into Michigan State, who, by the way, I think is undefeated too. I mean, Michigan State's good.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was respectable, but not surprising.
Yeah. Well, and again, it bodes well from them in their conference schedule.
They will. They're not. There's no Michigan States left in the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, if these teams that they've played cannot stop them from scoring, nobody in Conference USA can.
I agree.
Meanwhile, in the NFL, I mean, we had the marquee game on Sunday night that everybody paid attention to. I don't know that the game was as marquee as just the discussion about the game.
Yeah, a little over the top. The discussion. It is neat to watch, and Tampa Bay was fortunate to win.
Yeah, they were.
I mean, I think New England's found themselves a quarterback.
Man, Mac Jones really did look good.
He did. He looked good. He's composed. Mm-hmm. Probably outplayed Brady in a lot of ways.
Oh, yeah.
And, people say, well, he didn't throw the ball down the field a lot. Well, they don't have a lot of players who can go get it.
I was going to say.
It's one of the reasons why I kind of think Brady got out. Brady didn't throw the ball down the field a lot his last year either.
Yeah.
And
it's been a minute since New England's thrown the ball down the field.
But they are so good defensively.
Yep.
And they came within a – even if they made the field goal, it didn't mean they was going to stop Tampa.
Right.
But still, I think they found them a quarterback.
I look at what I saw last night from the Patriots and see that the formula that Belichick likes is in place. Mm-hmm. They just have to get to where they can.
They need some explosive players.
Yeah, they got to get somebody who can stretch the field and that kind of stuff, which, like we just mentioned, has been the case for New England for much of Brady's career.
Right, but they don't even have an Edelin.
No.
They don't have anybody like that,
Yeah.
much less a Randy Moss.
Right. And then overall, how'd you feel about the NFL weekend? Was it a good weekend? There's some surprising results.
I mean, Baltimore, Lamar Jackson again, big win at Denver.
Yep. And the Arizona Cardinals might be for real.
But the Rams bounced. I call that a bounce.
Yeah.
They come off their best performance against Tampa, and then they bounced and predictably got
Yeah.
beat. You watch, Arizona will probably lose this week.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah, I mean,
So
Kyler Murray's been a lot of fun.
Nature of the game. Chicago, who played probably the worst game in history against Cleveland, bounced back and won and looked respectable. I know they beat Detroit, but Detroit's been competitive with everybody.
Yeah. And then we had the Titans lose one that
To the Jets. Now, again, the Titans are up and down. The reason why they're so up and down is they're defensively, they're just not very good.
yeah. I mean, if you lose
they-
to the Jets, you're not very good.
Well, Zach Wilson looked like the number 2 pick. He was really good, and of course, Tennessee didn't have their 2 starting receivers.
Yeah. So, that was huge too. I mean, basically their offense is often one-dimensional, but it was extremely one-dimensional on Sunday.
I mean, it's Henry's, Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
But Tannehill can make plays, but did not have a lot of the. It's hard to lose A.J. Brown and Julio Jones. Those are 2 good players.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a fun season so far. Look forward to what's coming up in the future. It's the Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be back next week.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow. Coming soon to your FM dial, this is Fox Sports Radio, WCDS Glasgow, AM 1230.